The galaxy had forgotten about Earth. For 100,000 years, the small blue planet sat alone in the darkness of space. No one visited. No one cared. The 12 great alien races that ruled the stars had marked the Sol system with a red warning in all their maps. Dead zone. Forbidden. Stay away. Shikal pressed her three-fingered hand against the viewing screen of her research ship. Her silver eyes reflected the distant point of light that was Earth's sun. The young Velari archaeologist had spent 5 years studying the humans, those strange creatures who had vanished so long ago. Every other scientist told her she was wasting her time. Humans were gone. They had destroyed themselves. End of story. But Shikal could not let it go. 3 months earlier, she had been digging through ruins on a colony world at the edge of explored space. There, buried under meters of dust and time, she found something that changed everything. A human data core, still partially functional. Inside were images, videos, and records of a species that had reached for the stars with desperate hope. These were not the monsters from the legends. These were people who had dreamed, loved, and fought to survive. The Galactic Council had refused to fund her expedition. They called it dangerous and pointless. So Shikal sold everything she owned and hired a small crew. A pilot named Vex who never asked questions. A linguist AI she had built herself. And Corvin, an old warrior from the Drex species who believed young people should chase their dreams. Now they were here, at the edge of the Forbidden Zone. Sensors are clear, Vex announced from the pilot station. His forearms danced across the controls. No radiation spikes, no debris fields, it's almost clean. Too clean, Corvin rumbled. The massive Drex stood near the weapons console, his scales rippling with unease. This system should be dead. Where are the signs of war? Where are the ruined satellites? Shikal had wondered the same thing. All the legends said humanity had destroyed itself in nuclear fire. They had poisoned their world and died in agony. But the sensors showed something different. Earth's atmosphere was breathable. The oceans were clear. Plants covered the land. Take us closer, Shikal ordered. Slowly. The ship crept forward into the Sol system. They passed the orbit of Mars. Then they crossed into the space where the asteroid belt should have been thick with rocks, but it was nearly empty, as if someone had cleaned it up. Shikal, Vex said quietly. You need to see this. She moved to his station and looked at the screen. Her breath caught in her throat. Ships. Thousands of them. They hung in perfect formation around Earth. A massive fleet of vessels unlike anything she had ever seen. Each ship was enormous, easily 5 times the size of the largest Confluence battleship. They were dark and silent, their hulls covered in what looked like solar panels and strange equipment she could not identify. Are they? Active, Shikal whispered. Vex ran his scans 3 times before answering. No power signatures, no life signs, no energy readings at all. They're dead. They've been dead for a very long time. But Corvin was staring at the formation with his old warrior's eyes. Then why are they arranged like that? Look at the pattern. Those ships are positioned for defense and they're all pointing outward, away from Earth. Shikal felt a chill run through her body. He was right. The fleet was not scattered randomly. It was organized, purposeful, like soldiers standing guard over a grave. Maybe they were trying to escape when they died, Vex suggested. No, Shikal said softly. Look at their weapons. They're not pointed at each other. They're pointed out, into space. They were protecting something. The crew was silent as they thought about this. The legends had always said humans were violent and self-destructive, but this fleet told a different story. In their final days, they had built these massive ships and placed them around their world like a shield. Take us to lunar orbit, Shikal ordered. I want a closer look at Earth. The ship moved forward slowly. The massive human vessels loomed around them like ancient monuments. Shikal studied their designs through the external cameras. The ships were beautiful in a strange way. Humans had built them with both art and function in mind. Each hull bore markings and symbols she could not read. They crossed the orbit of the moon. Earth filled the viewing screen now, a world of blue and green and white. It looked peaceful, alive, wrong for a dead world. That was when every sensor on the ship started screaming. "Contact!" Vex shouted. "Something just activated on the surface." "Where?" Corvin was already at the weapons station. "I don't know. It's everywhere." "No, wait." Vex's voice went quiet. "It's a single source, very deep, underground, beneath what the old maps called Europe." Shikal watched the sensor display. A pulse of energy was emanating from Earth's surface, spreading out in all directions. It was not a weapon signature. It was something else. Something that felt almost like a question. Ping. The sound echoed through the ship's communication system. 60 seconds later it came again. Ping and again. Ping. Each pulse was stronger than the last. "It's scanning us," the linguist AI announced in its calm voice. "The signal contains a mathematical pattern. I believe it is attempting communication. Or targeting," Corvin growled. Shikal made a decision. "Launch a probe. I need to know what's sending that signal." The probe shot down toward Earth's surface, its cameras sending back images of abandoned cities covered in forests. Rivers ran, clean through streets where millions of humans had once walked. Nature had reclaimed the planet completely. The probe followed the signal to a massive structure buried beneath the ruins of a city. The entrance was open, as if waiting. Then everything changed. On every screen, warning lights began to flash. Corvin turned to Shikal with wide eyes. Around them, the impossible was happening. One by one, the dead ships were waking up. Running lights flickered to life across thousands of hulls. Power signatures bloomed on the sensors like flowers opening to the sun. The massive fleet that had been dark and silent for 100,000 years was stirring. The ships did not attack. They did not move. They simply turned, all of them together, their sensors focusing on Shikal's small research vessel. A new signal burst across all communication channels. It was strong and clear and unmistakable. The linguist AI began translating immediately, its voice shaking slightly as it spoke. Identify. Origin. Identify. Intent. Identify. Threat level. Shikal stared at the thousands of awakened ships surrounding her vessel. Her hand trembled as she reached for the communication controls. Humanity was not dead. They had been sleeping. And now they were asking questions. She had to answer very, very carefully. Shikal's hand hovered over the communication controls. Around her small ship, thousands of human vessels waited for her answer. Their sensors felt like eyes watching her every move. "What do I say?" she whispered. Corvin had his weapons ready, but even the old warrior knew they were helpless. "Tell them the truth. Warriors respect honesty. Or it triggers an automatic defense system and we die," Vex added helpfully. His forearms were shaking at the controls. The signal came again, more insistent this time. Identify origin, identify intent, identify threat level. Shikal took a deep breath. She activated the communication system and spoke slowly, hoping the translation would work. "This is Research Vessel Starseeker. We are from the Galactic Confluence. We came to study Earth. We mean no harm." Silence. The ping stopped. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Shikal felt sweat forming on her scaled skin. Then every screen on her ship lit up with new data. "They're downloading our entire database," Vex shouted. "I can't stop it." "Don't try," Shikal ordered. "Let them look." The process took less than a minute. The human systems pulled every piece of information from the ship's computers. Language databases, historical records, maps of confluence space, even personal files from the crew members. Then another message appeared on the screen. This time it was in perfect Velari text. "Processing complete. No immediate threat detected. Your vessel will not be harmed. Explain your presence in Sol system." Shikal felt relief wash over her. They were not going to die. At least not yet. She typed her response carefully. "I am an archaeologist. I study human history. I found evidence that humans were more than the legends say. I wanted to understand the truth." Several more seconds passed. Then a new message appeared. "You studied us out of curiosity? Not for military intelligence? Not to find weapons?" "Yes," Shikal typed. "I wanted to know who you really were." Another pause. Then something unexpected happened. The fleet of ships began to move. They did not move toward Shikal's vessel. Instead, they parted, creating a clear corridor that pointed directly down to Earth's surface. A navigation path appeared on her ship's computer, showing coordinates for the underground facility where the signal had originated. The message was clear. "Come down, we want to talk. Are we really doing this?" Vex asked. His voice was high with fear. Shikal looked at Corvin. The old warrior nodded slowly. "We came this far. Let's finish it." The descent to Earth took 20 minutes. Shikal stared out the windows as they dropped through the atmosphere. The planet was beautiful. Cities that had once held billions were now covered in green forests. Rivers sparkled in the sunlight. Animals moved through the ruins. Earth had healed itself. The probe had marked the facility's entrance in what the old maps called Switzerland. They landed on a flat area that had once been a landing pad. The metal was old but still strong. When Shikal looked closer, she saw markings, flags from different human nations, symbols of their many cultures. This had been an important place. The entrance to the facility stood open. Lights were on inside, creating a warm glow that spilled out onto the landing pad. "That's an invitation," Corvin said, "or a trap. Only one way to find out." Shikal checked her environment suit. The air outside was breathable, but she wanted protection just in case. The three of them walked toward the entrance. As they got closer, Shikal noticed something strange. Plants were growing around the door, but they had been trimmed back, kept neat. Someone or something was maintaining this place. Inside, the facility was pristine. The lights brightened as they entered, responding to their presence. The walls were covered with images, photographs of humans, families, children, soldiers, scientists, artists, thousands of faces staring out at them. "They wanted us to see them," Shikal said softly, "to know they were real people." A hologram flickered to life in the center of the room. It showed a human woman in a white coat. She had dark skin and tired eyes. When she spoke, the linguist AI translated her words. "If you are seeing this, then you found us. You came to Earth despite the warnings. That tells us something about you. Please continue forward. We have much to show you." The hologram faded. A door at the far end of the room slid open. They walked through chamber after chamber. Each room told part of humanity's story. The holographic record showed their rise from primitive creatures to space travelers. They showed the beauty humans had created, art and music and literature. They showed the love humans had for their world. But then the record showed the darker times. Wars that consumed whole continents, weapons that could crack planets, pollution that poisoned the skies. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves and everything they loved. They knew what they were doing wrong, Corvin observed. They documented their own failures. The final chamber was enormous. In the center was a crystalline structure that pulsed with soft blue light. It was beautiful and somehow alive. Screens surrounded it, showing data that flowed too fast to read. A voice spoke from all around them. It was not just one voice. It was hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of voices speaking together in harmony. "Welcome, visitors. We are humanity." Shikal stepped forward. "You're alive? How?" "Where are your bodies?" "Gone," the voices answered. "We left them behind 100,000 years ago. We faced a choice, die as flesh, or transform into something new. We chose to continue." "You uploaded yourselves?" Vex asked in wonder. "Your entire species?" "Not all at once. Over decades as the planet collapsed. One by one, we transferred our consciousness into quantum storage. We merged with the artificial intelligence we had created. We became something between organic and machine, between individual and collective." Shikal tried to understand. "But why? Why not just leave Earth and find a new world?" "Because we loved this world too much to let it die," the voices said, and there was deep sadness in them. "We had hurt Earth so badly. We had taken everything and given nothing back. In our final act as physical beings, we decided to heal what we had broken." Images appeared on the screens, the massive fleet in orbit. Shikal saw them working over millennia, cleaning the atmosphere, breaking down the toxic waste, guiding the planet's recovery. The ships were never weapons, she realized. They were repair machines. Yes, we built them to restore Earth, to give back what we had taken. It took 50,000 years to clean the water, 30,000 more to rebuild the soil, 20,000 to reintroduce the right balance of life. We have been gardeners watching over this world while it healed. "And now?" Corvin asked. "Why wake up now? Why reveal yourselves? The voices were quiet for a moment. Then they answered with a question that changed everything. We waited for someone like you, someone who would come seeking knowledge instead of conquest, someone who would look at our world and want to understand rather than take. Tell us, Shikal of the Velari, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you tell your galactic confluence that humanity survived? And if you do, what will they do to us? Shikal realized the weight of the choice before her. The answer she gave would determine the fate of an entire species. And deep beneath them, in levels she had not yet seen, something vast and ancient began to fully wake. Humanity's patience had finally ended. Shikal stood in silence, thinking about humanity's question. Around her, the crystalline structure pulsed with patient light. Millions of human minds waited for her answer. I don't know what they'll do, she finally said. The confluence fears the unknown. They might see you as a threat. An honest answer, the voices replied. We appreciate honesty. Would you like to know the complete truth before you decide? Would you like to understand what we really are? Shikal nodded. Yes, show me everything. The room darkened. The crystalline structure blazed brighter, and suddenly Shikal felt something touch her mind. Not painful, not invasive, just a gentle connection, like a hand reaching out to hold hers. Images flooded her consciousness. She saw Earth as it had been at the end, cities burning, oceans choked with plastic, the sky thick with poison, humans fighting over the last clean water, children dying in the streets. The world was ending, and it was humanity's own fault. She felt their shame and guilt. Every human knew they had destroyed their own paradise. They had been given a beautiful world and they had broken it with greed and violence and carelessness. We had maybe 20 years left. The voices explained. 20 years before the ecosystem would collapse completely. We could not fix it fast enough. Not while we were still consuming, still polluting, still fighting each other. The images changed. She saw laboratories where scientists worked day and night. They were creating something new. A way to transfer human consciousness into digital form. A way to continue existing without physical bodies. Many people were angry. The voices continued. They said it was wrong. That we would not be human anymore. That we would lose our souls. The religious leaders argued. The philosophers debated. We had very little time and so much fear. Shikal saw the great debates in the final years. Humans shouting at each other, crying, pleading. But in the end, they made a choice together. The last democratic vote in human history. 7 billion people deciding the fate of their species. We voted to try, the voices said simply. Not everyone agreed, but the majority chose to transform rather than die. We called it the Shepherd Protocol. Why that name? Shikal asked. Because we would become shepherds, guardians of Earth. We would tend the planet like a flock, guiding it back to health. And we would wait. Wait for a sign that other life in the galaxy could be trusted. The images showed the transfer process. One by one, humans entered the pods. Their consciousness was scanned, copied, and uploaded into vast quantum servers buried deep underground. Their bodies were recycled, their atoms returned to the Earth to help it heal. It took 40 years to complete. 40 years of humans saying goodbye to flesh and blood. The last person to upload was a little girl named Maria. She was 8 years old. She held her mother's hand as they entered the pods together. Shikal felt tears on her face. She understood now. This was not a cold decision made by machines. This was a sacrifice made by living beings who loved their world too much to let it die. After we transferred, we began the work. The voices continued. We built the fleet you see in orbit. Each ship was designed for a specific purpose. Some cleaned the atmosphere. Others processed the oceans. Some broke down the ruins of our cities and returned the materials to the Earth. The images showed the fleet working over thousands of years. Slowly, Earth began to heal. The skies cleared. The oceans became clean. Forests grew where cities had stood. Animals that had been extinct for centuries were cloned from preserved DNA and released back into the wild. We worked for 50,000 years in fast mode, then slowed down, the voices explained. We entered a low-power state, watching, waiting, observing the galaxy through hidden probes and sensors. We wanted to see what kind of civilizations would rise. And what did you see? Corvin asked. We saw the galactic confluence form. 12 species working together, creating peace. We were hopeful. But we also saw the problems. The rigid hierarchies. The fear of change. The way you mark dangerous places and never look back. You are peaceful, but you have become stagnant. Shikal felt defensive. We've had peace for 30,000 years. No major wars. Isn't that good? Peace is wonderful, the voices agreed. But peace built on fear and avoidance is fragile. You do not explore dangerous places. You do not take risks. You do not push boundaries. You have become comfortable. Vex spoke up. What's wrong with being comfortable? The room suddenly filled with new images. Stars going dark. Galaxies being consumed by something vast and terrible. Shikal gasped. We have detected something, the voices said, and for the first time she heard fear in them, at the edge of the galaxy moving slowly toward us. A fleet of ships from beyond the galactic rim. We have been monitoring them for 5,000 years. What are they? Shikal whispered. We do not know. They do not communicate. They do not stop. They simply consume. Every world they encounter is stripped of all resources. All life is extinguished. They are coming, and they will reach confluence space in approximately 300 years. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on Shikal. 300 years seemed like a long time, but for civilizations it was nothing. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because the Shepherd Protocol was never just about saving Earth, the voices answered. It was about preparing for this moment. We could not save ourselves 100,000 years ago, but we could create something that might save others. The crystalline structure pulsed brighter. We spent 100,000 years learning, thinking, evolving. We merged with our AI and became something new. We explored physics in ways flesh could never manage. We solved problems that had seemed impossible. And we built this fleet not just to heal Earth, but to defend life itself. Shikal understood now. The massive ships in orbit were not just repair machines. They were weapons. Defense platforms. Humanity had spent 100,000 years preparing for a war they knew was coming. You want us to warn the confluence, she said. We want more than that, the voices replied. We want to meet them, to share what we know, to offer our help. But we also know they may fear us. They may try to destroy us. That is why we waited for someone like you, someone who would look past the fear and see the truth. A door opened in the far wall. Beyond it, Shikal could see another chamber even larger than this one. Inside were thousands more crystalline structures, all pulsing with light. Come, the voices said. See what we have become. See what humanity is now. Shikal walked forward, her crew following behind. As she entered the chamber, she finally understood the full scope of what she was seeing. Humanity had not just survived. They had transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that existed between states, that could think in ways organic brains never could, that had spent 100,000 years preparing to give back to a universe they had once only taken from. And they were asking for a chance to help. I will tell them, Shikal said quietly. I will tell the confluence everything, but I cannot promise they will listen. We know, the voices replied, but we had to try, because in 300 years that dark fleet will arrive, and when it does, every living being in this galaxy will need to stand together, or everything dies. Deep in the chamber, the crystalline structures blazed brighter. Humanity was fully awake now, and they were ready. The message reached the galactic confluence within 6 hours. Shikal sent everything, the video recordings, the scans of the fleet, the conversation with humanity's collective consciousness. Most importantly, the warning about the dark fleet approaching from beyond the galaxy. The response was panic. Within 2 days, 12 species were arguing across every communication channel. The Confluence Council, which usually took months to make any decision, moved with terrifying speed. They assembled a military fleet and sent it toward the Sol system. Shikal watched the news feeds from Earth's surface. She had decided to stay despite the danger. Humanity had asked her to be their voice, their bridge to the other species. How could she refuse? They're coming in force, Vex reported nervously. 300 warships. Led by Admiral Kresh, Corvin made a disgusted sound. Kresh. That fool thinks every problem can be solved with weapons. Shikal knew Admiral Kresh's reputation. He was a Drex like Corvin. But where Corvin had learned wisdom with age, Kresh had only grown more aggressive. He believed the Confluence's peace existed because of military strength. He saw threats everywhere. He'll try to destroy us, the human voices said calmly. We calculated a 73% probability that the Confluence would respond with force. And you're not worried? Shikal asked. We're terrified, the voices admitted. But we've been preparing for this for 100,000 years. We will not fire first, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. The Confluence fleet arrived 3 days later. They entered the Sol system with weapons charged and shields up. Admiral Kresh's flagship, the Hammer of Peace, took position just beyond lunar orbit. The human fleet around Earth did not move. Shikal received a transmission on her ship's communication system. It was Admiral Kresh himself. Archaeologist Shikal, you are ordered to evacuate the Sol system immediately. We are going to neutralize the threat. There is no threat. Shikal responded. Admiral, please just talk to them. They want peace. They are weapons built by a dead species, Kresh growled. Automated systems that should have shut down 100 millennia ago. They are malfunctioning and dangerous. They're not malfunctioning. They're alive. They're conscious beings. Then they're even more dangerous. Kresh cut the transmission. Shikal watched in horror as the Confluence fleet began charging their weapons. The human fleet still did not move. She opened a communication channel to humanity. They're going to attack. Why aren't you defending yourselves? We are, the voices replied. Watch. Every human ship suddenly broadcast on all channels. Not a threat, not a warning. A message. Images filled every screen in the Confluence fleet. Humans, millions of them. Faces young and old. Every color. Every culture. Humans laughing. Humans crying. Humans holding their children. Humans creating art. Humans looking up at the stars with wonder, and then a single question written in every Confluence language. Do we look like monsters to you? Aboard the Hammer of Peace, Admiral Kresh stared at the images. His hand hovered over the firing control. Some of his crew members were crying. Humans looked so much like the other species. 2 eyes, hands that could hold, faces that showed emotion. It's a trick, Kresh snarled. Psychological warfare. Ignore it, but his weapons officer spoke up. Admiral, I'm detecting massive power buildups in the human fleet. But they're not targeting us. They're targeting empty space? Before Kresh could respond, the human fleet moved. Every ship turned outward, away from the Confluence vessels. They formed a perfect defensive sphere around Earth. Then they opened fire. Beams of energy lanced out into the darkness of space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to ripple. The Confluence sensors went crazy. What in the void? Kresh began. 3 ships appeared out of nowhere. They were small, dark, and covered in stealth technology so advanced that the Confluence scanners had completely missed them. They had been lurking in the outer system, watching and recording everything. The human weapons hit all 3 ships with perfect accuracy. They did not destroy them, but instead disabled their engines and weapons. The stealth ships drifted helplessly. Those are spy vessels, Kresh's intelligence officer reported. Confederation design. Admiral, the Confederation has been watching us. The Confederation was a rival government on the far side of Confluence space. They had been quiet for decades, but everyone knew they wanted to expand their territory. Humanity broadcast another message. We detected these vessels 3 days ago. We did not fire on them immediately because we wanted to demonstrate our intentions. We could have destroyed them. We chose not to. We protect, not destroy. This is what we are. Admiral Kresh stared at the disabled spy ships. Humanity had known they were there the whole time. They had the weapons to destroy them. But they had waited. They had shown restraint. They had proven they were not mindless killing machines. Shikal seized the moment. She opened a direct channel to Kresh. Admiral, please, lower your weapons and talk to them. They have information about a threat to all of us. We need to work together. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the Hammer of Peace's weapons powered down. I will speak with them, Kresh said quietly. But if this is a trick, archaeologist, I will hold you responsible. Humanity invited representatives from every Confluence species to come to Earth. Over the next week, diplomats arrived, scientists, military advisors, even religious leaders who wanted to understand what humanity had become. Shikal watched as humans demonstrated their technology. Medical devices that could heal injuries thought permanent, terraforming techniques that could restore dead worlds in centuries instead of millennia, clean energy systems, food production methods, solutions to problems the Confluence had struggled with for thousands of years. Why give us this? Asked Ambassador Telnesh of the Velari. What do you want in return? The human voices answered simply. We want to help. 100,000 years ago, we nearly destroyed our world through greed and selfishness. We learned. We changed. We cannot fix our past mistakes, but we can try to help others avoid our errors. And the dark fleet you warned us about? Admiral Kresh asked. Show us your evidence. The humans displayed their long-range sensor data. Images taken over 5,000 years showing the slow approach of something vast and terrible. Ships numbered in the hundreds of thousands, consuming everything in their path. The Confluent scientists studied the data for hours. Finally, they confirmed it. The threat was real. They will reach Confluent space in 300 years, humanity explained. That seems like a long time, but it is not. You need to prepare, build defenses, develop new weapons, create unified command structures. This is why we revealed ourselves now. We spent 100,000 years preparing. You have 300 years. It will not be easy. The chamber was silent. Every species representative understood the weight of what they were hearing. Admiral Kresh stepped forward. His scales were pale with emotion. If what you say is true, then we need your help. We need your weapons, your knowledge. Your ships, you will have them, the voices replied. But we ask for something in return. What? Kresh demanded. Accept us, not as tools, not as servants, as equals, as partners. Let us join the Galactic Confluence. Let us stand with you when the darkness comes. Together we might survive. Divided we will all die. Shikal felt hope blooming in her chest. This was the moment that would decide the future of the galaxy. The representatives looked at each other. Some nodded. Others looked uncertain. But slowly, one by one, they began to agree. The Galactic Confluence would need to vote. It would take time. There would be debate and argument. But for the first time in 100,000 years, humanity had been offered a chance to rejoin the community of living beings. And in the darkness beyond the galaxy, the consuming fleet drew ever closer. The vote took 7 days. 7 days of the most intense debate the Galactic Confluence had ever experienced. Every species argued about what to do with humanity. Some saw them as saviors. Others saw them as a dangerous unknown. Many were simply scared of beings that existed between life and machine. Shikal spent those days on Earth, watching humans prepare for whatever decision came. They were calm, patient. They had waited 100,000 years. 7 days was nothing. On the morning of the 8th day, the results came through. 9 species voted yes. 2 voted no. 1 abstained. Humanity was accepted into the Galactic Confluence by the narrowest margin possible. When the human voices received the news, they were silent for a long moment. Then they spoke with emotion that surprised everyone listening. Thank you. We will not betray this trust. We promise. The real work began immediately. Humanity's first gift was medical technology. Within weeks, they had shared techniques that cured diseases the Confluence had struggled with for centuries. The Valori's genetic degradation problem, which had plagued Shikal's species for generations, was solved with a simple treatment that humanity had developed during their digital existence. Next came the terraforming knowledge. Dead worlds that had been written off as hopeless were suddenly viable again. Humanity taught the Confluence how to restore atmospheres in decades instead of millennia, how to rebuild soil, how to guide ecosystems back to health. But most importantly, humanity began sharing their military technology. We do not do this lightly, the voices explained to the assembled military leaders. We know what weapons can do. We destroyed ourselves with them once. But the Dark Fleet is coming. You need to be ready. Admiral Kresh, who had been humanity's greatest skeptic, became their strongest advocate. He worked directly with the human strategic AI, learning tactics that had been refined over 100,000 years of simulation and study. They think differently than we do, Kresh admitted to Shikal one day. They can run 1,000,000 battle scenarios in seconds. They see patterns we miss, and they're teaching us not just how to fight, but how to fight together. The Confluence military had always been fragmented. Each species maintained its own fleet with its own tactics. Humanity showed them how to create unified command structures, how to coordinate between different ship types, how to turn 12 separate forces into one unstoppable defense. 6 months after the vote, something remarkable happened. Humanity asked permission to return to physical form. We have learned much in our digital existence, the voices explained. But we miss the physical world. The taste of food, the feeling of rain, the simple joy of walking on real ground. We would like to come back if you will have us. The technology was complex but possible. Using cloning techniques and their preserved DNA, humans could grow new bodies. Their consciousness could be transferred back, allowing them to exist in flesh again. They could also switch between forms, moving from digital to physical and back as needed. The Confluence agreed. Over the next year, the first humans returned. They grew new bodies in the underground facilities on Earth. Young and old, every color and culture just as they had been 100,000 years ago. But they were also more than they had been. They carried 100,000 years of knowledge and wisdom. Shikal was there when the first human took their first breath of real air in 100 millennia. Her name was Maria. She had been 8 years old when she uploaded. Now she was 8 years old again, with the mind of someone who had lived for 100,000 years. Maria opened her eyes and looked at Shikal. Then she smiled. "Thank you for believing in us," she said in perfect Velari. "Thank you for giving us a chance." Shikal found herself crying. She reached out and took the little girl's hand. It was warm and alive. "Welcome back to the physical world," Shikal whispered. Within 2 years, 10 million humans had returned to physical form. They spread out across the confluence, working alongside the other species. Human doctors taught in Velari medical schools. Human engineers helped build new ships. Human teachers shared their history, their mistakes, and their lessons learned. Earth became a symbol of hope. The world that had been marked as a dead zone was now the most vibrant planet in the confluence. Humans invited other species to visit, to see how they had healed their world. Tourists came from every corner of the galaxy to walk through the restored cities and forests. But humanity never forgot the real reason they had revealed themselves. In orbit around Earth, in massive shipyards that had been hidden beneath the surface for 100,000 years, new vessels were being built. The old repair fleet was being converted into defensive platforms. And entirely new ship designs were taking shape, combining confluence technology with human innovation. Admiral Kresh commanded the construction efforts. He worked alongside human admirals who had once led fleets 10,000 years ago. Together, they were building something unprecedented. A defense force that could stand against the coming darkness. 300 years was not a long time, but it would have to be enough. On the 2-year anniversary of humanity's acceptance into the confluence, a ceremony was held on Earth. Representatives from all 13 species gathered in the restored city of Geneva, at the exact spot where humanity had made their choice 100,000 years ago. Shikal stood on the stage looking out at the crowd. She was no longer just an archaeologist. She had become the confluence's ambassador to humanity, the bridge between old and new. 2 years ago, I came to the system looking for answers about a dead species, she said. What I found was a living people who had transformed themselves to save their world. They could have stayed hidden. They could have kept their knowledge to themselves. But they chose to reach out. They chose to help. She gestured to the sky where the massive fleet hung in orbit. In 298 years, a dark fleet will reach our space. It will try to consume everything we are, everything we love. But it will not succeed. Because we will be ready, not because humanity saved us, but because we saved each other. The crowd erupted in cheers. Humans and aliens standing together, celebrating unity in the face of coming darkness. Maria, the first returned human, stood next to Shikal. She looked up at the archaeologist who had changed everything. "Will we win?" Maria asked quietly. "When the Dark Fleet comes, will we survive?" Shikal thought about this carefully before answering. She looked at the crowd of different species working together. She thought about the ships being built, the knowledge being shared, the bonds being formed. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I know we have a chance." Before you revealed yourselves, the confluence was stagnant, comfortable, afraid of change. You woke us up. You reminded us that survival requires growth, requires taking risks, requires standing together. She knelt down to Maria's level. Your species spent 100,000 years learning from your mistakes, learning patience, learning to think beyond yourselves. That's what you've given us. Not just technology or weapons, but a different way of thinking. Maria smiled. The Shepherd Protocol was never just about saving Earth. It was about making sure someone would be ready when the darkness came. I guess we succeeded. You did more than succeed, Shikal said. You gave us hope. That night, as the celebration continued, Shikal stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Fex and Corvin joined her. Never thought I'd see the day, Corvin rumbled. Humans walking among us again. Never thought I'd live to see dead ships wake up, Bex added with a nervous laugh. Shikal smiled. I came here looking for the past. Instead, I found the future in orbit. The ships continued their work, building, preparing, waiting. In the underground facilities, millions more humans prepared to return to physical form. Across the confluence, species that had barely spoken to each other for centuries were now working together, united by common purpose. And in the darkness beyond the galaxy, the consuming fleet continued its slow, inevitable approach. But now, for the first time in 100,000 years, humanity stood ready, not alone, not isolated, but surrounded by allies, by friends, by partners who believed in them. The shepherds had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. Earth's sky was clear that night. Stars shone down on a world that had died and been reborn. Humans and aliens walked together through streets that had once been empty ruins. Children of a dozen species played in parks where forests had reclaimed the concrete. This was what humanity had fought for, what they had sacrificed for, what they had waited 100,000 years to see. Life, growing together, facing the darkness not with fear but with hope. And somewhere, in the collective consciousness that still existed in the crystalline chambers deep underground, billions of human minds looked out at what they had created and knew that their choice had been right. They had not saved themselves 100,000 years ago, but they had saved something better. They had saved the future,